All right. Welcome to Winterviews Series 4, Episode 2. I am your host, Catherine Silva, Cat for short. And tonight we have the amazing Scott J. Moses here. How are you doing, Scott?
Doing well. Long day at the office, but happy to be here talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Are you getting the snowstorm that we're getting here?
Baltimore's weird in that it'll call for so much snow and then it will only rain. So we have rain, but
Gotcha.
they're saying next week might be intense, but could just be more rain.
Yeah. It's honestly, we've had so much more snow this year than we had last year up here that it's almost I don't know. I'm not prepared for it, I guess, is the best best way to put it. And it's
Sure.
always happening on the days off that I have.
Mm.
So I finished shoveling the driveway not that long ago, and that was fun.
Can't even imagine how much snow you guys get up there.
I mean, we've probably got about maybe 2 feet on the ground.
Sheesh.
So yeah. It's good for the winter sports stuff, which is my day job. So
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah. But back to what we're really here about tonight. We're here to talk about the subject of surreal horror, which is something that I've dabbled in, but I don't know as much about. So I'm going to come into this from the angle of somebody who's very curious about it, and would love to know all about your take on it. So before we get into that, though, I would like for you to take a moment and just tell the audience a bit about yourself. Familiarize them if they don't already know who you are.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Scott. I write under Scott J. Moses, mainly because another author already took Scott Moses, so I had to be
Oh,
pretentious and throw the J in there. But yeah, I write literary horror, very existentialist kind of, I don't know, dream-esque type horror, more on the quiet psychological side rather than like blood and guts. And yeah, I've been doing it seriously, I guess, since I was 25, and I'll be 35 this year. But I've been writing ever since I was a kid.
awesome. Awesome. And how many books do you have out now? I know the one, obviously, but
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I released a self-published collection, I guess during the pandemic, 2020, Hunger Pangs.
okay.
Um, yeah, that titular story became the first chapter of Our Own Unique Affliction. And then I did an anthology a few years ago, What One Wouldn't Do, pretty heavily focused grief kind of anthology, like what one wouldn't do to, fill in the blank pretty much. But
Gotcha.
yeah, that's about it. I'm querying a novel now and drafting another, so see how it goes.
Okay. And who published the anthology?
Yeah, actually, just me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I always
That's
wanted to
awesome.
be. Well, thanks. I've always wanted to be an editor, and I was like, you know what? Why the hell not just check this box off now? And it like almost killed me, and I didn't write for 6 months. I don't know if I'll do it again, but it was fun.
Oh, it's so much work.
So
It's
much
it's
work.
a lot of work, but it's really fulfilling, and um it's amazing to see what other people come up with in that grief and existentialist umbrella.
Oh yeah, yeah, very fulfilling for sure. I don't mean to knock it, but
No.
anytime I think of it, I just remember how like exhausted and like manic I was back then. It's a good time though.
Yeah. No. I understand. I'm at the end of getting out an anthology also that
I
is in
saw.
the grief and existential horror vein.
Hmm. Looks
It's a
great.
lot.
I'm sure.
But we are here to talk tonight about our own unique affliction, which is being re-released by Shortwave Publishing. And it looks amazing, the new cover and the new layout and everything. And there is definitely some surreal scenes in that book that we will take a closer look at. But it is mainly a vampire book. And before we get into the questions, the thought questions that I had, I just want to know what your just about, like, I guess what your interest in vampire fiction is, because we all kind of had a start, somewhere that we really kind of fell in love with vampires and wanted to write about them. So I guess what was it about this book that made you want to write about vampires?
Ooh, what a question. Honestly, the monster was just the best vehicle for the story itself. I wanted someone who lived forever and struggled with that, and yeah, just it just was the right monster for it. Because honestly, if you were to ask me werewolves or vampires, I would say werewolves all day.
Oh,
No
okay.
disrespect to vampires, but the vampire was just the best kind of archetype for the story I wanted to tell.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So maybe we can expect a werewolf story from you in the future.
After I finish drafting my current novel, that's the next one on the docket, I think.
Okay. Cool. So back to the surreal horror. My first question, well, I'll explain what surreal horror is first for the people who might not understand. It's very much like dream-like horror, or it's a very highly visual sort of dream-like quality in fiction that sort of plays with themes and showing things that may not actually be happening, but are sort of representative of what's going on in the character's life. And I'm sure I'm butchering that definition so hard. But when I think of surreal horror, the first thing I think of is The Cell. From God, what, 2000s or something, which was this super, super visual movie about like being inside a serial killer's mind, and there's all this crazy shit happening.
Okay.
And I do recommend it. It's a very early J-Lo movie. And I think Vincent D'Onofrio's in it also.
Okay.
But yeah, so in terms of your writing with surreal horror, what draws you to writing that kind of horror, that sort of dreamlike quality?
It's a good question. It's almost like asking someone why they like sad songs. I don't really know why. I just do. It's just fun for me. I don't know. Like the point and definition you just gave, it's almost like you get to write things that shouldn't be happening, but they are. And I think there is a certain trust with your reader there. I feel like, and you did it exquisitely in Undead Folk, by the way. I love that book because you trust your reader to just keep up. You're not like spoon feeding or anything. You're holding your hand out and expecting them to grab along and follow along at the same pace you are. And I really love that about your book. And I think that's with surreal horror and surreal fiction, there's a lot of trust with your reader, and you just have to be like, hey, keep up because this is happening. It's just fun for me. I don't know. Like, have you read any Joe Koch, like The Wingspan of Severed Hands, or?
Unfortunately, I have not, and I really want to, because I've heard such phenomenal stuff about Joe's work.
It's pretty
It's
incredible.
definitely on the list.
It's incredible. He actually gave me some of the best advice I've ever gotten writing wise when it comes to writing the surreal. I remember asking him years ago. I was trying to write a dream sequence, and I was just like, it just doesn't feel right. And he was essentially like, stop saying like the air is like this, or the air is as if this is happening. Say like
Mm,
this is happening. This is straight up
yeah.
happening. And he was like, just trust your reader to ride the ride with you. And that changed, like, I think I leveled up just by getting that advice in writing. And it's just fun to me. It's like, hey, this is happening. You can reread the page if you like. You did read it correctly. Now
Mhm.
let's keep going. I don't know. And you can get weird with it, like physics don't really apply. I don't know.
Yep.
It's just fun. It's fun to me.
Yeah. It is basically anything goes. Um, and that's but it can't it's I don't know if I truly trust what I just said too, because it's also like you do have to keep it in check. You have to breadcrumb it a little bit, but also
Sure.
have faith that that people can follow along.
Sure.
Um, and I've seen reviews of Undead Folk where people have said, I'm a third of the way through and I have no idea what's going on. And I understand that that trying to maybe just trust everybody with being able to understand what's going on might be I don't know, not for everyone. I guess it's the surreal horror genre is I'm not sure how to even describe it. It's so unique and God, I'm blanking really hard right now trying to explain like it's not for everybody, but it is this like yeah, I'm having a major brain fart, so I apologize.
I think you're
Um
nailing it. I think you're nailing it. It's
but
not for
it's
everyone until they get it. And it's some people like a linear story, like very concrete, and
yeah,
it isn't quite that.
it's I guess it goes along with the idea that that you are trying to present a very visual thing in book form to somebody, and some people aren't as good with the visualization of surreality. um that they need it to be literal. They need to understand concretely what's happening on the page, and short of somebody spelling out for them, this is a dream sequence, or this is, somebody is in this person's head or whatever. It's I don't know, it's just hard to pull off, and not everybody can do it well. And you did a really great job of it in Our Unique Affliction
Oh, well, thanks.
with your main character. Um, and I'm gonna try not to spoil anything because I would really like people to pick up this book and check it out. Um, so so I guess I will go on to my next question, which is telling the audience a bit about your ideas for Our Unique Affliction that brought that novel to life.
Sure. Well, gosh. When I was writing that, it was a pretty dark time for me. I was dealing with some pretty heavy undiagnosed OCD kind of during the pandemic that I guess I'd had my whole life, but I didn't know. And it's not, people think OCD and they're like, oh, can't stop washing their hands, flicking the light switches. It can be literally anything. It can be a thought. And mine, it was all about the existential stuff. It was all about what happens when you die, nature of reality, um, just all that unknowable stuff. That's the point we're human. We're never going to know. And it was just stuck on that. And after, therapy and some soul searching, not to get into it, but I guess here we are. This is where it stemmed from. Um, I never wanted to like punch my card, so to speak, but I just didn't feel I needed more reasons to live, like to be here. Um, and just yeah, after therapy and everything, I found the realization that was there in front of me the whole time. It's like this life is temporary, and
Mhm.
given that fact, that is fact, it makes everything have meaning. And I just had meaning washed over my world again when I really realized that. And while I took solace in that fact, and that was a part of what I think saved me and got me screwed on right again, I started to wonder what happens with someone who, say, lives forever and they don't have that out that just saved me. Like, say,
Mhm.
it doesn't end for them. How do they reconcile meaning and all of this? And it's not to say now I've grown a lot in the last 4 years. The fact that this ends isn't the only reason I think life has meaning personally,
Mhm.
but it was a hell of a place to start.
Yeah.
Um, so that's definitely where the story stemmed from. I actually carry a list of reasons that I just come across now in my notes app, just that give this life meaning. And I love being alive, and I know it's going to end one day, so I'm going to just milk it. Um, but yeah, to your earlier question, the vampire just fit the bill for the story. Self-loathing, living forever, angsty little vampire.
Mhm.
So it just all kind of formed, I guess, out of necessity. It was almost like an exorcism, and I know people say that, and I believe that they mean it, but it definitely was for me. It was just getting out all that onto something I could look at and really piddle with, and yeah, it's just a really healing book to write. I'll
Mhm.
probably be rambling at this point, but
No, no, you're not. No, it's I'm really glad that this book was something so transformative for you. And it's I mean, it speaks to that. It's the language is beautiful, the story is really captivating. Um how did you go about coming up with your main character specifically?
well, I mean, a lot of her thoughts were thoughts that I had, not every single one, but it was a very personal story. I mean, it was just like bleeding. People say bleeding on the page, and again, I believe them, and that's what it was. Uh, it was just there. It was a lot of my thoughts, and a lot of it was just stream of consciousness stuff I would write when I was feeling a certain kind of way. And I don't know, like even the first chapter, like I don't know, it was just there's a lot of catharsis there. I don't even know how to answer the question really.
Yeah,
It was a lot of me, and just I just needed a vehicle, and I was like, this is the vehicle, this vampire.
sure. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question or not.
No,
It's
it's
very organic, I guess.
yeah, no, that's it's great. I like you have a very small cast of characters in your book, which makes it very easy for a reader to identify with them, um, and and sort of understand where they're coming from. Um, and it was interesting to me that we never had a scene really where we had the main character's sister on the page in present. It was always in memory. Um, and I wondered if you could talk about that decision.
A little. I don't want to ruin it
Without
entirely.
spoiling. Yeah.
Sure, but yeah, that was definitely intentional, though it didn't begin as such. I wanted like that weight of guilt, um, and to only address her in memory, to be like the protagonist was only looking at her sister as this holier than thou, someone that she would just eternally fail and never live up to. And it was just kind of a way to kind of do that, I think, a bit more. Because, we can get ideas of people, good or bad. And if you would just sit down and actually talk with them, you'd get a more realistic presentation of that person. But we can tell ourselves all sorts of stories about some people, and that's the story we end up believing sometimes. So yeah, it was
Mhm.
definitely intentional. Um, I wonder if she would have just had a conversation with Hannah Grace before the book even began, if the book would even exist.
Mhm.
So that was definitely intentional, though. I'm actually really happy you picked up on that. You are only
Mhm.
one of two people who have brought that up to me, and
Oh.
I really appreciate that.
Oh, it was one of the first things I noticed when I like to read a book and then kind of sit there and think about it before I write a review. And that was one of the overt things that stuck out to me. The other thing that I appreciate about it is that your writing, and this book is a very character driven narrative versus plot driven. um there is a plot, there is stuff going on, but it does feel like it's the characters who are driving it. It's not, and it doesn't feel like a Fast and the Furious movie, like, just to sum it up. It's not a high octane um summer blockbuster, but it is very thoughtful, and I appreciate character driven narratives a lot in
Same,
horror fiction.
likewise.
Um, so I one of the characters that I was very intrigued by was the truck driver,
Mm.
and I'm forgetting his name
It's all right. It's
at the
Bodici.
moment. That's okay. And I kept wanting to know what was going on with him,
Mm.
um, because he comes across as such a mysterious character. Um, and you did a great job with just representing him as this other person. For a while, I thought he was another vampire too, so I was just very like, who is this?
Mm.
This person that seems to have such sway over these characters. But again, not going to get too far into it here, but there's things, people, and you need to read the book. Um so my next question is, and this is not one that I wrote down, so I apologize, but it is, you play a lot with time um in the book, and sort of backwards and forwards, uh and that kind of plays with the surreal aspects of the book. It makes it feel more dreamlike because we're moving back and forward in time. Like, what feels like we were just in this chapter, and then we'll go to the next chapter, and it's, I don't know, a month later or 2 months later or something like that, but it feels like just um a second for this character that lives forever. um can you tell us about those choices and writing that in the book?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I was grateful and lucky enough to have a reviewer refer to what you just described as she said it was like pouring water over the brain,
Hmm.
like kind of taking your brain and just mixing up all your memories and just whatever comes out in whatever order is how it works. And I really wanted to especially do that during the hmm, how to not spoil something. For a lot of the book, as you know, Alice is, as opposed to like a vampire novel where the vampire is just eating hundreds of people, she's actually starving for the majority of the book. I'd say at least half of the book, she's starving.
Hmm.
And in that state, I wanted to really blend her life before she was turned and her life after. And that was so fun, and that you can just take memories from the past and meld it with the future. And maybe they actually happened, maybe they didn't. She's
Hmm.
so starved, she doesn't know what happened and what didn't until she comes to. So yeah, it's just really, really fun because like you said, you could just have a character just turn their head and it could be a different scenario entirely, and you just trust your reader. Like it's like, I've got you. You have to earn trust, of course, as you said earlier. You have to
Mhm.
leave enough, you have to leave a path. But if you trust you've done so, it's just a really fun way to trust your reader. Um, Another book that does this is, have you read Sophia Osram's Coup de Grace?
It's like in my TBR pile, my
Sure.
imminent TBR pile. I was really hoping to read it on vacation, and then I
Mm.
got sick.
Yeah.
So now it's resigned to the back of the TBR until I can finish reading everybody that's that I'm currently interviewing.
Sure,
So
sure. That's a great one. It's an exemplary example of what we're discussing. And gosh, I don't even know if I answered your question. Um, to be honest with,
you
sorry, it's been a
did.
long day. Okay, good. But yeah, I don't know. It's just fun. I think it's just, it goes back to trusting the reader. Like it's something that Brian Evanson does really well, and Laird Bear and John Langan. Um, it just doesn't, it might not make sense sentence to sentence, but after you get with it, you're like, oh, I see what they're doing now, or at least you hope that's the
Mhm.
case. It's just fun.
When you were writing it, did you know it was going to be a novella, or did you have any um interest in turning it into anything longer, or was it just kind of like you ended it and you knew that it was the right length?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild sometimes a story just gets legs. I remember I had a hip surgery at 29, and I was fairly immobile before that, and a lot of pain for about 9 months. And
Hmm.
I always say that to say this: I wrote that story in a Starbucks in the city, just super depressed and like, and in so much
Wow.
pain. I wrote the first chapter, Hunger Pangs, and I was like, this is a way to get how I'm feeling out. And that was about just like what we've discussed already, like finding meaning not only in impermanence, and she can't find it in impermanence because she lives forever. So it's the
Hmm.
people around you, that's a big part of what gives us life meaning, I think, is the people around you, and the time, just time in general. It's a dwindling thing. So maybe it is about impermanence. I don't know. But yeah, and I wrote the story there, and it was just an anchor to the collection I was putting out on my own. I think I may have submitted it to, I submitted it to like 2 or 3 places, and it's so strange because I got one rejection, which this is totally subjective. I'm not saying anything negative to these editors, but one was like, this is too horrific for our literary magazine. And then another rejection was like, this is too literary for our like horror genre magazine. And I was like, oh, interesting. Uh, like no shade or whatever. I just think
Can't
it's
find
funny.
the
I don't know.
Goldilocks level.
I guess, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's funny. It's just, it's just so subjective, like what we both do.
Mm.
But yeah, I wrote the story, and that was that. I just that was the end of it, I thought. And then when I released the collection, Eric Raglan of Cursed Morsels
Mm.
Press, he
Yeah.
uh he really planted the seed to like, he's like, I'm curious what happens after this. And I was like, I don't even know what do you mean? Like, it's done. And he's like, I'm really curious to your question point earlier about this Bodici character. Like, he's so,
Mhm.
he said he was like, so his presence was really felt, even though he never appears at all in that chapter or that story,
Mhm.
in the flesh. And I was like, you know what, maybe there is something more here. And then all that stuff I mentioned earlier, it just
Yeah.
kind of, it happened at once, and it just really
Sure.
worked out. I don't know. So yeah, to your point, I thought it was a short story. That was the end of it, and
Mhm.
now it's a novella. And now some of those characters are actually showing up in the novel I'm currently drafting, which I may cut them, but it's been fun to
Yeah.
kind of revisit some of
Sure.
them. I don't know.
Awesome.
It's all about having fun, right?
Yeah. Totally. And I guess we have Eric to thank for planting the seed. So thank you very much, Eric. He and I used to be in a small writing group together, so I'm very happy that you and he had that discussion.
Yeah. Oh, and
Um,
Ross Jeffrey as well. Ross Jeffrey
oh,
also
Ross,
brought up. So yeah, I have to give credit where credit's due. Without them, I
nice.
don't know if it would have even been written.
That's awesome. Um, So back to the actual act of writing the book, and writing surreal horror and sort of dreamscape scenes. Are you a very, like, can you visualize what you're writing when you're writing it? Are you a more visual person?
Yeah, I would say so. People have commented that some of my writing feels very cinematic, and that's as I'm drafting. Excuse me. As I'm drafting, that's kind of how it feels. I do kind of see it play out. Although some stories also are just they're started with a concept or like a still image,
Hmm.
usually the climax, and I essentially just am like, all right, how did we arrive here? Um, which I'm very grateful for. Um,
Hmm.
I seem to have more ideas than I can write, which I would rather be in that side than some of my friends and colleagues are like, I have no idea what I'm going to write next, and I have a 2 book deal, and I've only written the
Hmm.
one, and it's like, oh, that sounds terrifying. But yeah, I would say maybe a hybrid. I don't know if that's a cheating answer or not, but I don't know. I guess I'm very visual, but also concept is very important
Hmm.
as well. Maybe I'm just trying to play both sides here. I don't
Um,
know.
well, it's no, it's interesting because there's that whole discussion that's been around about, like, how detailed authors can actually visualize things when they're writing them, or I guess it's hard for me to envision what it's like not to be able to visualize something so, I guess, so concretely,
Hmm.
because that's how I do it. I just I feel like it would be so much harder not being able to see um, what you're trying to write.
Yeah, I agree.
So, um, so I guess, and then the choice to write surreal horror because it's so visual, um, what it would be like not being able to have a concept, I guess, in your head. But I just spiraled there. So I was going somewhere with that and then lost myself. Um, I was trying to get to a point.
I
Um,
was picking up what you're putting down. I understood. It's been a long day for both of us, it sounds like.
and yeah, I think the shoveling the driveway really took it out of me.
Sure.
Um, and my next question was, does your inspiration for surreal horror come from imagery or concept? And you kind of said that it's a hybrid. Um, so I don't know if I have a follow-up question for
I
that. Um, other
don't know if I
than
gave a
maybe, what's your favorite scene that you wrote in that book
hmm.
of the surreal quality,
Oh gosh.
without giving spoilers because that's hard also. I'm asking for a miracle.
Sure. Man. There's one I would love to talk about that is probably my favorite. It's essentially near the end, and it's just an amalgamation of characters who may or may not have come and gone, and they're just there inexplicably.
Mhm,
But I guess the one I'll talk about now is the story of how like Alice was turned at some point in her fever dream of starved fever dream. She is in the POV of the vampire who slaughtered her family
mhm,
and turned her and her sister. And I thought that was just a nice way to really trip people up, not with the intention to do so, but it just I was trying to drive home that dichotomy of like she hates her current, she's grieving her life and what this
mhm,
new thing is. And I thought that was a kind of a fun way to do it, to just to have her embody the thing that she so greatly loathes,
mhm,
but that she is. And that was just a fun way to do it. Because a lot of people, and again, it's not for everyone, as we've discussed. Like my book, first and foremost, is not for everyone, of course, and Surreality is very just not everyone enjoys it, which is totally fine. But some people took it literally, and they're like, "Oh, so she did this," and I was like, oh. I mean, you can't obviously never respond to reviews, but I was like, "Ah, that stinks." But the people who get it, I'm like, "Oh yeah, you understood."
Mhm.
But that's just little cherries on top for me. But yeah, that was a really fun one to write, just her and the POV of the one who turned her as she's just spiraling through her memories. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Um, I was trying to remember. I feel like I had a favorite scene as well that was in near that same uh near that same time, but it involved the mother, and I won't say any more than that. But it was definitely a surreal scene that did not actually happen, or maybe it did.
Maybe
Um,
not.
and yeah, it was just really, really well written, really scary. And so now because I've already run out of questions. We're technically in the wrap up section um, of the episode, in which we can go on about this forever, but we're basically going to talk about influences, like what films or books or games or media has influenced your writing with surreal horror.
Sure. I tried to make a list earlier because there's just so much, and you never remember it when you go to remember it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of film, are you familiar with the Ghost in the Shell films, the anime?
I I'm familiar with them, but I have not watched
Hmm,
any of them. But I
I
do
got you.
know of them.
Sure. Well, I highly recommend it because I think it would be up your alley. They're very existential, like cyborg, human. Where does one begin? Where does the other end? Type things. But there was a scene in Ghost in the Shell too that really hooked me in the way I try to hook others in the surreal scenes. There's a character and he's going to interrogate another character, and the scene just keeps looping with subtle changes, and there's
Hmm.
no introduction as to why. And it happened so much so that I grabbed the remote and I paused it, and I was
Hmm.
like, "There's something wrong with this playback. Like something's clearly wrong." And I noticed the time was still passing on the track, and I was like, "Interesting." So then I played it again, and essentially his mind has been hacked by the one he's going to interrogate. He's stuck in a loop,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, they got me. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, so I highly recommend both of those films. There's a show called it was a few years ago called Maniac on Netflix with
Hmm.
Jonah Hill and Emma Stone. It's about these people that go to this clinic like to work through their trauma, and they take these pills, and they uh, explore like therapy through dreams, and it's very
Hmm.
effective. It's very experimental. But these two characters, machines, they're beside one another and they malfunction, and they are able to enter. They're actually in together both of their subconsciouses at the same time, and it's just a
Okay.
crazy, warped, amazing show. If you want to laugh, if you want to cry, I highly recommend it. I think it's pretty short.
Hmm.
It may be one of my favorite shows ever.
Wow.
To be honest, are you familiar
Okay.
with Wong Kar Wai, the director?
I It's not a name that I think I know, but
Well, his films, like Fallen Angels, does that sound familiar? It's an iconic kind of motorcycle shot where the guy has a cigarette in his mouth and the girls kind of wrapped around him and they're on a motorcycle.
I don't think I
Anyways,
knew that one either, but
I'm probably fanboying over him. He's like, I just discovered him like last year and I binged all of his movies, but all of his movies are very dreamlike, and
hmm.
there's just that ethereal quality to it, and they're all very character driven. So I think you would enjoy them as well. I
Hmm.
definitely recommend them. But yeah, that's very a dreamy thing to me. Um, in terms of books, oh, and another one. Sorry, I can go on forever. But
No, it's
another
good.
movie.
No, it's good.
There's a movie called Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. If you're
Ooh,
familiar with like Old Boy and Lady Vengeance and those movies,
okay.
the first one's very dreamy, and I really don't want to spoil it, but I can't spoil it, especially going to that movie blind, which is no help. I mean, I know I'm talking about this in an interview, but yeah, watch that movie. And in
Okay.
terms of books, I do have quite the list, but I'll start with the king because he is the king. 11/22/63
Mm.
is a super dreamy, reality bending book. And if you've read it, which I'm pretty certain you have, right?
I this is a second night of revelations, horrible revelations. Last night
Uh,
I told Clay that I had not seen several classic horror movies, including The Exorcist.
oof.
Um, Tonight it is that I have not read any Stephen King
Really? Wow.
except for The Road Virus Goes North. It's the only
Okay.
thing that I've read. And it's not because I don't like Stephen King, is because the size of his books intimidate me. I am a terribly slow reader.
No, I get
And
it.
that's the only reason. In that book, that's a tome. That thing is huge.
Hmm.
Um, I've been really interested in it, and I would love to read it, but I'm
No, no, no.
I'm
I understand. I understand. His books are so intimidating that I can't physically read them because I am slow as well, a slow reader. So I have to do it on audiobook. But that book is, I don't know, it'd probably be up your alley. It is a commitment, but it's so good. And actually, while we're confessing things, I know you were talking to Clay. I believe it was about Clive Barker, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was another interview. Maybe it was another interview. Uh, Mike Tyree, actually, I think it was Mike Tyree. I have not read any Clive Barker, so that is my forgive me, Father, for I have sinned moment.
I haven't either.
Just so we're even. Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, no,
I tried.
you're good. Um, I will. My getaway there is that I got somebody into reading horror, though, who is not a reader, and his first horror book was Clive Barker. So I
Hmm.
feel like maybe I get some credit
Hmm.
there,
I think so.
even though I haven't personally read any. Um, but uh, but yeah, the I have seen Hellraiser. I don't
Mhm.
know if you've seen Hellraiser, but
I have not. Maybe that's my confession. I have not.
uh very definitely has some scary dreamlike quality stuff going on.
Hmm.
Um you had more on your list though of books besides
Oh, so many,
Stephen
but
King.
stop me
Yeah.
if I'm rambling, but
No, go for it.
like have you read House of Leaves?
I haven't read it. I have it. I have started it several times. Again, it's the size of the book. I know what happens in it. I have
Hmm.
spoiled it for myself a lot. Um, I also have the companion CD by his
Uh,
sister.
is it Poe? Is that
It's
right?
Poe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's fun. It's a wild ride, but that book actually got me back into it rekindled my love for reading as an adult. I hadn't read in years and like I picked that book up of all books. I mean, you're literally turning it and there's
yeah.
like it's crazy and it got me back into reading. So that thing is surreal as hell. And I highly recommend it if you can stick out the journey because it's like climbing Everest sometimes. You feel or I felt like I was going insane while reading
Hmm.
it, and I think that's the point. There's even one point where it asks you to look behind you, and my back was against a wall, and I still looked
God.
behind me. So it was pretty unsettling.
Okay.
But definitely that book. I mean, I'd say anything by Brian Evanson, Laird Barron, John Langan. I've been really into Haruki Murakami, if you're familiar,
I know.
lately.
Yeah. I haven't read them either, unfortunately, but I am familiar.
I hadn't until last year, but it's more on the literary, like he's like a one of those cornerstone Japanese novelists, but he does a
Hmm.
lot of dream-like stuff and a lot of surreality, and it's just more like not just, but it's more like literary fiction. But I'm just really picking up what he's putting down. Have you read Sarah Grand's Come Closer?
I haven't, and that's one that Clay brought up last night as well. God, there's so many things I have not read, but it's on the list again. It's I have seen it. It's in many a list.
It's probably the scariest thing I've ever read. I don't know if I'd actually read it again. But that's very like, is she possessed? Is she losing her mind? Regardless of what it is, she's aware it's happening, and it's terrifying. And not to be too long-winded, because I know I just have examples and influences for days, but Blake Crouch's Dark Matter or Recursion, if you're familiar, those are more like science fiction bent, but they're very like nature of reality bending. Like Dark Matter is more like Schrodinger's cat, like, is the cat, that's pretty much that. And Recursion's about going back in time, and I think, I don't want to botch this, I believe it's like going back in time and changing the path of things. There's one that Sophia Osram actually made me wise to when Sophia was on Talking Scared. It's I Am the River by T.E. Grau. That is essentially just like stream of consciousness, like Vietnam government experiment gone wrong, and this protagonist doesn't know what linear even means anymore. He's just living through memory, or so it seems, and that one is actually pretty hard to keep up with, in my opinion. But if you grab on with both hands, it's such a good ride, and surreality for sure. And then just a few others, and I'll shut my trap.
You're good. Keep going.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because I was like, man, I actually do have a ton of these that I love and that I'm influenced by. Sophia Osram's Coup de Grace, I have to mention that again. It's about a man who's on the way to he's on a subway train. He's on the way to end his life, and steps off the train, and he's in a subway terminal that he just can't seem to escape, because it seems like there's no exits. Maybe there are no exits, and everything just keeps shifting. That book is incredible. I'm a little biased, but I really love that book. It just really understood me on a personal level, I think, to a degree. And then another one would be, and I guess my final one, because I know I'm talking a lot, would be Micah Castle's The World He Once Knew, if you're familiar.
That one I have read.
You have? Oh, cool. Hey, there we go.
That is because Micah was on last season of Winterviews. So
nice.
We did an episode. I think he was episode number 3, maybe.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to go back and watch that one. Yeah, that's a great one. It's just, haunted house in space. And like amnesia is always fun, especially with surreality. Just, I don't know. I ate that thing up, and I thought I was a little pompous. I thought I knew where it was going, and nah, not at all. I was pleasantly surprised, and I would have been enjoying it either way, but I was very pleasantly surprised by the whiplash. But that's the end of my my long list. I don't know, like, surreality is just fun, because it's like, hey, things are happening. Please try to keep up if you can. It's like what you are reading is what's on the page, and it's happening. Let's have some fun.
I honestly have not read too many surreal horror books that I can immediately conjure in memory, which is really a shame, because I do enjoy them, but I've definitely seen movies. It's one of my favorite kinds of horror movie. So things like The Cell, and then the rest, that director, really, anything that he does, and I can't remember his name for the life of me. It starts with a T, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I'm very ignorant when it comes to film, so I'm not a good resource there.
He directed a TV series that was sort of like a fantasy version of The Wizard of Oz, called Emerald City.
I know of it. Okay.
And that also, like, insanely visual, beautiful, like very dark. Um, just really well done. Um,
Is he Russian?
he might be. It's
Like
like Tarson
Tarkovsky or
or
something?
something.
I think I know who you're talking about. I've not seen any of the films, but
So we did this
yeah.
last night, where Clay and I both tried to find a name by looking it up. Um, Tarsum Singh is the director.
Hmm.
Um, and he has done, I guess he did Selfless as well, which was Ryan Reynolds' movie, I think, about like
Hmm.
some body swapping. So definitely some visual horror
Hmm.
there. Um, and then the big one that I will also mention because I'm a huge fan is Silent Hill 2,
Hmm.
because it's so insanely surreal, um, and really well done. And it's, of course, uh, it's inspired so many other games and films and everything else,
Hmm.
that
It's
I
very
think.
like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no, no, you're good.
I was just gonna build upon what you said. It's very as a matter of fact as well. It's like this is happening.
Yeah,
Maybe you'll find
yeah,
out why, maybe you won't, but you're here.
yeah. Um, and it's such a change from the first game, which I would say is not definitely is not in the same vein of the surreal horror. It's not, you know, trying to teach you a lesson or anything.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, but yeah, that's a huge one for me.
Mhm.
So I figure it was worth a mention.
Definitely.
Um, before I go on to the last my last question, or second to last question, did you have anything else that you wanted to mention? I don't want you to feel like you're you're needing to
Oh,
truncate your
no.
list or anything, um,
Not at
because
all,
I'm
not at all.
interviewing you. So
Not at all. I'm actually ashamed of how much I've talked. But yeah, I guess I'm really influenced by it. Like just a ton of, I mean, all of us are, but that was the extent of my list, though, and I really thank you for allowing me to
yeah,
rattle on.
I actually just thought of another one, and it is the film version of a book, and everybody hates the film version. And
Really?
I
Hmm.
really like it, but it's What Dreams May Come.
Hmm. Robin Williams,
And
right?
yeah, um, and I love that movie.
Hmm. I do
Uh,
too.
I think the visuals in that movie are wonderful and terrifying,
Hmm.
um, particularly the hell stuff,
Hmm.
um, and limbo, I guess if you could call it that.
Hmm.
Um, it just it's definitely stayed with me in my own writing. So
That's a good one.
sorry for all the people who, prefer the book over the movie.
Hmm.
Uh,
I've not read the book, but I did enjoy the movie. I actually only saw that for the first time last year.
mm,
And I was just like, man, like, where is I didn't even know Robin Williams did this, like this
yeah.
sort of thing. It's great. I loved it. Makes you think a lot. I was thinking about
Mhm.
that for probably the rest of the week after watching that one. It's a great
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. His dramatic acting in that was great.
Hmm.
Um, but so my second to last question is, I need a reminder here.
Very good.
Um, come on, phone. Is Are you working on anything at the moment that falls into the surreal horror facet?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I wouldn't say surreal horror is like my shtick, so to speak, but I
Sure.
do inevitably include it in most of my stories. It just kind of naturally happens. So currently, I'm querying a consensual possession novel, which deals heavily with like selflessness versus selfishness, and like if someone's possessed consensually, where does the possessor end and the possessed begin, and do they begin
Mm,
to meld and kind of
okay.
lose? I don't know. It's like that sort of existential thing, but it's very mind bendy because it's just two minds,
Okay.
kind of, without giving too much away. I'm still trying to sell it, but I think I'm close, but I don't want to jinx anything. I've had some
Yeah,
encouraging
sure.
emails lately and
Okay.
calls, but I'm afraid I'm going to jinx it. So I'll
Well,
knock on this desk right now.
we'll cross our fingers for you.
I'm crossing everything I have.
Have
But
you seen Possessor? Just out of curiosity.
I haven't, but you are not the first person to tell me to watch it.
Okay. It's not one that I mentioned last night, oddly enough, during our possession episode, but um it is quite good,
Hmm.
and I think you definitely would like it.
It's about an assassin, right? That possesses different people
Yes.
to do the assassin. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I need to watch that one. You're not the first person to tell me. You might be the straw that breaks my back. I should probably just watch that this week.
Yeah, it's that's one that'll stay with you too.
Hmm. Okay. And then yeah, I guess
Mhm.
I'm currently drafting like a Japanese ghost novel with an OCD riddled kind of protagonist.
Mhm.
There's a lot of surreal elements in there, and that like he's trying to find out what happened to his mother, but it maybe was a supernatural event. It might have been like more a mental illness type thing.
Okay.
And his, if you're familiar with OCD, there's a tendency to spiral, and there's quite a bit of spiraling in the
Mhm.
book, um, which isn't maybe literally happening, but in his mind, it feels very real. Or maybe it is
Mhm.
happening. I don't know. But that's been fun. It's been tough. It's really been throwing me for a loop. I've been working on it for over a year, but I
Mhm.
think we're getting there. Anyways, that's what
Okay.
I'm currently working on. But
Nice.
how about yourself? Because I know you really like surreality and existentialism. And are you working on anything currently, like to deal with any?
Um I am. My current book that's coming out at the end of April, which I'm still fiddling with, is Vulpine Curse, and it definitely has some surreal um pieces to it. It is still falling in the grief horror category. Um but it's basically this, drought-ridden dystopian world, where this widower is cycling through the last he's cycling through the first four stages of grief
Hmm.
without ever getting to the last stage,
Oh,
um, on purpose,
hmm.
and is also an assassin for this terrible person. So he's,
Hmm.
choosing to try and be apathetic as he's killing people, as he's holding off this acceptance of loss. And it's characters from Undead Folk and
Oh,
that
awesome.
universe. And I
Hmm.
don't I want to avoid saying that it's part of that series because it is a standalone
Hmm.
novel, but that universe has just affected me so much that I'm having a hard time letting it go. Um,
I understand how that
so,
goes. That's awesome. I'm
so
I'm glad to hear that. Hell
yeah,
yeah.
so that's what I've currently got going on, and then one that definitely has a lot of surreality in it is Sorrow Eater, which is going back to the editing board right now because I have been unsuccessful in my attempts to sell it.
Hmm.
So, um, so it needs a little work, but I'm confident that going through it will do the trick. So
Sure, yeah. I wish you the best. I mean, I know the struggle. I've been querying that one for quite a while now. So I understand. I mean, we both know how it goes.
yeah.
It's more of a subjectivity thing sometimes, but sometimes we read it back over and see something we missed the whole time if there's anything to be seen. So
Yeah.
more power to you.
Oh, thanks. And good luck on the Japanese horror ghost story that you're working on as well.
Thank you. It's been tough.
Yeah.
It's like pulling teeth.
So that brings us to the end of our episode. If you wouldn't mind letting the audience know where they can find you, that's kind of our last question. Where
Sure,
can
yeah.
people keep up with you?
Yeah, of course. I'm on let's see, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, a Twitter account exists. I don't know why at this point. It's more of a placeholder, I guess, or that's what I'm telling myself, but really I should just probably. But yeah, I'm not active there, so I would just adhere to the other three really. And I'm trying to be there, kind of like what Clay was. You were both discussing last night. I'm trying to do that a bit less. Just because I feel like I'm there too much. Like I could be writing so much more, and I spend a lot of time there. Actually, a friend of mine just recently, out of the blue, just up and deleted his Instagram. He's like, like life's like so much better, and I'm like, damn, I just need to do this already. But you kind of need it as a writer.
Yeah,
it's that battle.
It's really hard to juggle that need to be part of a community, or feeling like you need to be part of a community, and feeling like you need to sort of know what's going on, and also like actually getting writing work done and enjoying things that are happening outside of social media.
Just outside in general. Yeah.
Yep. I understand.
Just noticed you can see all the cat hair floating in the screen on my end. Like
I was wondering what that was. It's kind of like, oh, it's like a feather maybe or something. Up there.
Yeah. It's not like a, no fan, no high-tech modeling thing going on. But yeah, I just noticed like my cat, it's like a dairy cow print cat, and like her white hair is just everywhere. When the HVAC kicks on, that's what that is. That's not an orb, no ghost hunters type stuff, I don't think. But I just saw that and I was like, wow, that's embarrassing.
No, it's not. If anything, it was just entertaining for me. So awesome. Thank you very much for coming out and talking all about your book and giving us all kinds of great recs. And good luck on everything you got going on.
Well, likewise, and thank you for having me. This has been awesome, and you're awesome. Read Undead Folk; it kicks ass, so much ass. And I need to read the third one. I still haven't done it, but the first two were amazing, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Are you going to be at AuthorCon? Curiosity.
I feel like I need to be. I've never been to a con, although I'm going to Horror on the Rappahannock. If you've heard that one or seen it floating around. I have
heard of that one. Yeah.
I will be there. Like, I'm really looking forward to meeting just all these internet folks I've been talking to for forever. Like, I think Clay will be there, and Sina Pelayo, and a ton of people. But yeah, AuthorCon, it's Williamsburg, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I need to. It's close enough to where I have no excuse. I really should. I don't have a better answer than that. I guess I'm like...
That's okay. I just wasn't sure if you had signed up for it or not, so that's why I was asking. But
if I were there, it would just be as an attendee. But yeah, I don't know. I'm probably too introverted for my own good. I need to just step out of that shell, meet all these folks doing the same thing I am.
It's once you take the plunge, it's not as scary as it might seem. That was my first big show. And I'm really glad that I went because I met a lot of great friends there. A lot of really friends who are super close now. So yeah, something to keep on the docket anyway.
I need to come out. I know I need to. It's next month, right? March?
It is end of March.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I need to go. I really do.
Well, if you go, I'll be there. So
cheers.
We can hang. But we're done. I meant to end the stream. So thank you all for watching. We appreciate that you've been here. And next week we will be interviewing Corey Fahrenkopf with his new collection that's coming out next week called Haunted Ecologies. That looks to be pretty amazing. We'll be talking eco horror. So just tune in Thursday the 13th at 8:00 p.m. for that. And we'll see you then.
Read Living in Cemeteries. It's great.
And read Living in Cemeteries and read Our Own Unique Affliction.
Undead Folk. Do it. Coup de grace. Do it.
Bye, everybody. End stream. Oh my God.